I'm ready.
Okay. So this is our fall workshop series, and today's, the one that we're giving right now is going to be managing a budget, which hopefully you all knew. And so I'm Brooke Ostrom. I'm one of the business and media mentors for Citrus Circuits.
I'm Richard McCann. I'm another business and media mentor. So we're going to walk through how to both manage your budget and how to raise your budget. You think that robotics is about building a robot. Well, it's not. It's really about an army marching on its stomach. I don't know if you know about the Vietnam series that's being shown on TV right now on PBS about what happened in the Vietnam War. One of the interesting statistics that came out of that is the U.S. Army in Vietnam, only 20% of the people were in the front lines. 80% of the Army was actually supporting the rest of the Army. So you got to understand there's a lot of things that go on underneath that make a team happen, and your being here is actually going to make your team happen.
So just to give you a little bit of overview, we're going to talk about how you build your budget, how you put that together, how you manage that budget, make sure that you get through the year with enough money to cover your expenses, how you fund that budget, finding sponsors and finding funding for your team, and then how you plan for the future. So as you look for your team to expand and what you do as you grow. So building a budget, the components of your budget are pretty straightforward. You know, you're going to have materials that you're building your robot with, the tools that it takes you to build that robot, any additional equipment you might need, whether that's mills or lathes or whatever, your registration fees, which is obviously a pretty big number that you should all know how much that's going to run you every year. Your travel, and I know every team handles this differently, but travel expenses for your team and how you do that. And then promotion, what other kinds of expenses you might have, whether that's for T-shirts or making buttons or whatever else, but anything else that your team does that's going to cost you money. So as you put that budget together, what you want to find out are, what costs are the team covering? Typically your team is definitely going to cover the cost of your robot. You're probably covering the costs of, your materials, and your equipment or your tools. Now some of those may be provided by whoever your sponsor is. If you're sponsored by a school, maybe you have a machine shop there and you don't have to worry about capital equipment. But in other cases maybe your team's responsible for that. So you just need to know, like, if you have to buy your capital equipment or something, how do you budget for that, and how do you budget for that over time? I know every team is a little different on how you budget for travel. Now, for 1678, we pay for travel and travel expenses for all of our students. So as a result, our budget is probably a little bit bigger than other teams may be. But that's just something that we've committed to, and so when we do our budgeting and we do our fundraising, that's all put into our budget. Maybe for your team you don't pay for travel, so you're going to have a little different looking budget than maybe we would. If you have costs that are covered by other sources, like your school district, there may be restrictions on that, how you spend that money. So like we get money from our school district, and that money can only be spent for certain expenses on the team. We can't spend it for travel, for example, but we can spend it for, say, like equipment or tools or something, or we can spend it for reimbursements for mentors. There's very specific things it can be spent for. So. And you may have other sponsor money that may be encumbered in some way or another, so you just need to be aware of that, is when you're getting money from different sources, whether it's your school district, whether it's an outside sponsor, you need to be aware of how are you, are there things you can and can't do with that money, and you need to work that into your budget. So in building a budget, the easiest way to do it is really look at what does each one of your sub-teams take to run what they do. So what we do is we break our budget down into each sub-team. So there's mechanical, electrical, we have robot programming, app programming, and business and media. So each one of those sub-teams sits down and puts together a budget for the year. So part of that should be built on what did you spend the previous year. So hopefully all of you have some sort of a system that allows you to look at what were your past expenses. How much money did you spend last year to build the robot? How much money, so that was probably going to give you a good idea what it's going to take this year. Are you going to build a second robot? So you're going to have to, budget for that to look at, how much more would it be for us to do a second robot. If you have, expenses every year, say like in app programming, maybe they're going to need new computers this year, or maybe they're going to need new computers in 2 years. You need to start thinking about how do we raise the money for that? How do we put that into our budget? How much are those computers going to cost? What kind of computers do you need? Where are they going to come from? So, all those things are components of your budget. And the easiest way to do that is have each one of your sub-team leads sit down and put together their budget for the year. What kind of expenses are they going to have? What kind of equipment are they going to need to purchase? Is there anything else that they need either this year or to plan for future years that you need to put into your budget?
So then the next thing is, now that you've got a budget, how do you manage it? The budget is about setting up a framework for your expenses, and it's not necessarily your goal for your spending. You don't want to set out a budget for $60,000 and then spend that if you don't need to spend $60,000. That's what you're trying to stay within. And then the next thing about managing that budget is tracking your expenses. So you want to have a way of being able to match your budget item to your accounting system in some way. So we have our ledger, and we put each one of our expenses into categories that match up to our budget categories, and we then cross-match them in order to track what's happening with our budget. Are we on track with our budget or not? And if we're starting to exceed our budget, then we start to talk to the sub-teams. You're not going to be able to buy that tool lathe that's cost $7,000 that you were planning on buying. We've said that sort of thing before. So that's you need to track those sorts of things when you're managing your budget, and you need to set up a nice system for doing that. We use Google Sheets to do it. Because it's easy for people to be able to get access to the same file. You can have multiple people working on it. Some organizations use QuickBooks I guess it's QuickBooks. There's a non-profit version that's available for QuickBooks at a very low cost. So that's an option that you can choose as well. We also have well, I guess I was talking about that, programs or formats for accounting. So that basically covers the types of things that we use for doing that sort of system. You need to make sure you get people trained up on working on those accounting systems so that you have multiple people working on it, and then you have people cross-checking that as well. Just having one individual leads to two problems. One is they make mistakes that get missed, and the second one is they can walk off with the money if you're not paying attention. That happens to nonprofits. So you really want to have checks and balances in your system. And then finally, it's really important to maintain a ledger of your expenditures, and that's got to be tracked to your budget. So you've got line items for each one of your expenditures and notes about what happened with that particular expenditure. What was it for, date, etc. And then, as I said, you can break that into segments to match up with your budget, to make sure things are going on track.
So just to ask everybody here, so for each one of the teams, do you guys maintain some sort of a record of expenses, some sort of a budget in a spreadsheet or something? So what do you guys use?
We use just the standard
Google Sheets. How about you guys? Google Sheets. Anybody use anything other than Google Sheets in here? Excel. So yeah, pretty much the same thing, similar program. So that's obviously a real easy way. A lot of people can collaborate on it, and that's something that is easy to set up and maintain from year to year. So as Richard was talking about, maintaining accountability is really important. If for any of your teams, you've got a fair amount of money that's coming in from sponsors and is being spent on your team, and being able to show that you're using the money responsibly and just being able to know where your money comes from and where your money goes to is extremely important. So one of the types of things you use is like a purchase order system. So have a form that people can fill out, for either reimbursements, either ahead of time as sort of like a purchase order. Say, hey, I'm going to buy X amount, so that can be put into your system, and that's going to be spent. Or set up a reimbursement system so that somebody provides, a form that's got all the, summarizes all their expenses. It includes all their receipts. And then that's usually something like on our team, that's checked by two different people. So Usually one person will go through, we'll have a student accountant that basically goes through all that, adds it up, makes sure everything looks right, that all the expenses seem to be legitimate for the team, and then that's also gone through and approved by our lead mentor. And then we actually have a third step to that, but mainly it's just to make sure that everybody, number one, try and provide timely reimbursements to people, but number two, just to make sure that the expenses are what they're supposed to be. And so that does get into the team approvals, which is, there is an approval process so that it goes through, our lead mentor approves each one of those, and then it goes to our, parent treasurer, who then, will issue the check and make sure that everything is legitimate. So as Richard was saying also, so it's really important to link that to your ledger. So that's, what our student accountant does is when they go through that all then gets broken. We ask the people who submit it to break it down on the spreadsheet that comes with it, where it's spent. So is it an electrical expense? Is it mechanical? Is it for robot programming? So each one of those expenses is put into a category, and so then that makes it easier for us to transfer that over to our accounting system and put it into the appropriate place. So then that way, as we go through the year, we can see, is mechanical spending too much or not enough? Usually it's too much. Is business and media spending more money than they're allocated? So that's the way we can kind of track the budget, and so you can really track it by sub-team and see how each sub-team is doing in relation to their budget.
And I just mentioned that we do have a reimbursement form that we're more than happy to share with anybody who wants a sample to set up their own system, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So the next thing is funding your budget. And I'm going to start with my own little story of how we started out with this. So I started with the team in 2012. Our team raised about $35,000 that year, and we were really happy that we'd raised that much because I think we'd done $20,000 the year before I joined. I went to a workshop, and Jim Beck was in this workshop about fundraising. And he was telling the story about the Hawaiian kids, Team 359, that very successful Hall of Fame team. And he said they raised $250,000 last year. And I went, you're kidding. There's no way. We can't possibly raise that much money out of our community. It's impossible to do that. We are now standing where we're passing $200,000 in our budget this year. It is possible. It is possible to raise that much money from your combination of parents, school districts, and other business community and sponsors, because we did that growth over 5 years. So just don't feel like there's some top level that you're going to get to in terms of funding your budget. It is possible to get to that level, and we're here to help you try to figure that out. So what we look for is sponsors that connect with FRC. So that's one of really critical. We have learned how to communicate our message to our sponsors in a way that they respond. And I think that that's part of crafting your message. It's a big advantage to be an FRC, and we'll talk a little bit about this, that you are very attractive to a lot of sponsors. We have gotten grants in the past. We'd go out search for various grants there. So sometimes we seem to fall into grants at the various times, but you got to look for your opportunities in order to get grants. You get several $1,000s out of those. We do a lot of in-kind donations, which you're probably all familiar with, but where you go out, get machining done, get certain parts done, and offer that sponsorship, that logo on the robot or on the back of your shirt. I think we've got a lot on the back of this shirt, and this I think is an older shirt. So that's an offer for those kinds of folks. And think about it. It's that you can get food, you can get food, you can get your printing, you can get some of your travel reimbursement. Skunk Works, 1983 out of Seattle. Alaska Airlines gives them $30,000 in travel vouchers every year to fly to St. Louis or to Houston. So, and then there's fundraising through parents, which of course you're all doing, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more about how you best connect with your parents to get the most out of your parents. So, yes, they are just money pots to be harvested. And then finally, getting your school district involved. When we started out, we were getting nothing more than a classroom and a little bit of teacher time, which he was really volunteering to help us. And then we managed to get our school board connected. Actually, we're doing so well, we actually have 2 kids on our team who are school board, their parents are school board members. And we use that connection to help raise funds out of our school district. We now call ourselves co-curricular rather than extracurricular, because we are really part of the educational mission of the district. And so you need to make that connection with your school district in order to make them realize how valuable you are to their educational mission.
So as you know, FRC and the program you're involved with has a lot of attractions to, working with the, other people in the community, other businesses. It's a great program. And I think that one of the things that we've seen has been the most successful for us in connecting with sponsors and actually like connecting with parents and things like that is get them into your shop. Bring them in and let them see what you're doing. Because it's been the biggest things that I've seen in the last few years is when they come in and they see what you're doing and they see your team working on a robot or your team putting something together or your team even just in there meeting and talking to each other and what's going on around them. That makes the biggest impact on sponsors, and it makes a big impact on parents. I know, as Richard was saying, we've really increased the amount of money that we've raised from parents in the last few years, primarily because we've made more an effort to reach out and have them come in, hold an event in the shop, let them go around and talk to all the kids, see what everybody's doing, see the machine shop, and all of them come away, really impressed at what their students have access to, which most of them in the past never really knew. They never really saw the program in action. Same thing with sponsors. We try and hold opportunities for the sponsors to come into our shop. We have like a sponsor day where they can come in, we show them around, we give them a tour, and we've had enormous success with that, where the sponsors see this and they see it as being, a really great program and something that they want to be associated with. And I think that this is the other thing that we've kind of changed in the last few years in how we approach sponsors, is that you have to kind of think of it as a business relationship. It's not just, hey, give us money so we can go play with robots. You're really entering into a business relationship with these companies. And you're saying, look, here's an opportunity for you to not only support us, but be a part of what we're doing. We're going to put your name on our robot. We're going to put your name on our shirts. If you would, maybe you can offer us, mentors. People could come in here and help and do something hands-on. We can help do things about how you work with our team through social media that helps promote you and shows your involvement in the community. I mean, it is a great business relationship, and that's really kind of the way we've approached it with our sponsors. It's not just, hey, we'd like you to give us money, but it's like, we'd like to work with you. We'd like to have a partnership with you as a business partner with our team. And that's also been a message, I think, that has been really effective in how we've reached out to more sponsors. So, it is. They like to see the opportunity that you guys are, it's a great program for kids. They like to see the fact that you're working with technology. STEM is obviously a big issue out there right now for not only schools, but for businesses. You're providing a really innovative educational model. We always talk about it as a sort of a peer-to-peer model where we have students teaching other students. We have mentors that are involved in that process also, but I think it's very exciting for the school and for sponsors to see, how students are teaching each other and learning these kind of skills from each other. And invite them to your competitions. I mean, that's, kind of where the rubber hits the road or the wheels hit the carpet or however you want to put that. But that's a great place for sponsors to come, and they can see the excitement. They can see all the teams there. They can see what you're doing. They can see what the results of all this are. So make sure you get your sponsors to your competitions. If I think all of you are probably competing in a local competition somewhere. Whether it's in San Francisco or it's Silicon Valley or it's here, for the Sacramento Regional or whatever it is. Invite your sponsors and then set up an opportunity for when they get there to have a student take them around and take them down to the pits and introduce them to the team. And, sometimes you can set up like special areas where, you can have VIP seating for the competition. So those are all ways to get people engaged because, it's a great product and there's, it's a great opportunity to connect with sponsors through those kinds of activities.
So what we offer as partners are connecting with our community. So we, for example, we go out to the farmers market almost every Saturday and see thousands of people who come by, and we talk to them about our program. We try to connect entities with other sponsors. UC Davis is one of our key sponsors. We trying to look at opportunities to get an educational institution like UCD connected with other sponsors like NVIDIA. We connect with the Northern California technology community. That's a key part of this, being in with NVIDIA, being in with Schilling Robotics. Those are key partners in our community as well. And then we also do a lot of media outreach. So we are out in our newspaper. We have in our local newspaper yesterday, there was a story about this competition. We have a story in our newspaper for almost every competition before and after. We do Facebook posting. We have 2,500 or more, maybe 3,000 likes on our Facebook page. We're constantly updating people through Twitter, et cetera, in our outreach. We're actually on Chief Delphi. We have a fairly high visibility there as well. And so we do a lot of outreach in various ways. Actually, we are going to have Channel 31 here on Sunday morning, tomorrow morning. They're going to come because we've reached out to get them to come to the competitions. And then we try to work on media projects together. For example, last year, NVIDIA filmed us along with some other teams to use in a promotional video that they had. And so those are the sorts of things where we're trying to get higher visibility for us and for our partners. We also try to acknowledge our sponsors whenever we have media releases on our Facebook page, that sort of thing. So this is all part of making you attractive to outside sponsors.
Yeah, I think that, as Richard was saying, I mean, the important part of that is, acknowledge your sponsor. If you send out a press release on your event, acknowledge your sponsors in there. Have something at the end that says, you're sponsored by, whoever your sponsors may be. Put it on your Facebook posts. Say something about your sponsors. So those are all, great ways. Using social media, using the channels that you have to promote your sponsors really helps that relationship. So one of the things that we've done to try and keep sponsors and grow our sponsorships is getting more students on the team involved with it. And a few years ago, we came up with a program kind of based on what I think a lot of businesses do, which we call our sponsor retention program. So a lot of times in business, you'll hear that the easiest client for you to get is the one you already have. So it takes you less money and less time to keep a client than it does to go out and find a new one. So we looked at it the same way with what we're doing with sponsorships. It's really important for us to maintain the sponsors we have and continue to have them as an ongoing sponsor of the team. And that obviously takes a lot less time and energy than going out and trying to find new sponsors every year. I mean, we do still try and find new sponsors. We continue to look to grow that. But we make a big effort to try and maintain the ones we have. So we started a sponsor retention program. And I think on a lot of the teams, and I know it was on our team before too, it was pretty much business and media was doing all the sponsor outreach. And we realized that wasn't really healthy for the team because not everybody on the team really realized what went into getting those sponsors. They didn't really understand what the relationship of the team was to the sponsors. So what we've done is we've created contacts among the entire team for all of our sponsors. So every sponsor has 2 people that are responsible for contacting that sponsor. So there's generally, we have a lead person who comes from one of the sub-teams outside of business and media, and then they're supported by another student on business and media who helps provide them with, like scripts for sending out emails, or materials to send to them. And then what that student does, who's the lead on that, they make the contact to get their sponsorship now. We're right in the midst of all that. They reach out to get the sponsorship. They follow up with them to make sure that they're going to sponsor us this year. They send out like a thank you after we've gotten them as a sponsor. And then over the course of the year, that student's also responsible for sending them a copy of our newsletter, inviting them to events, just basically keeping them up to date on what we're doing. And the idea again is to create a personal relationship with that sponsor, so that sponsor sees us more than just once when we come and ask for money, but they see us over and over again throughout the year. And so they're aware of what we're doing, what the activities are, and they can kind of see how they're a part of this whole thing. And like I said, the advantage of this was that everybody on the team ultimately becomes responsible for fundraising. It's not just business and media. It's not just a couple of kids who are doing that. So everybody on the team at one level or another is involved in reaching out to sponsors and helping retain them. It was sort of talked about earlier, getting people in the shop is a big thing. And a couple of years ago, we started a program at the beginning of the year to bring the parents in for sort of like a kickoff party for the season. So about 3 weeks ago, we invited all of our parents, new students, returning students, everybody, to our shop. We did a barbecue, had a potluck. They got a presentation on the team because, like a lot of teams, probably 75% of our team this year is new. So they got an opportunity to see the shop, to learn more about the team, to talk to each one of the sub-team leads, find out basically what their students doing, and who they're working with and what kind of things they have available to them. And in the last 2 years we've done that. I would say we've easily increased our parent contributions well over 100%. We've more than doubled the parent contributions we've gotten just by starting to bring them into the shop and let them see what we're doing. So again, it's like everything else. Bring your parents in, let them see what's going on, and they're going to be a lot more excited about supporting that. And then as Richard touched on also, the media outreach. We try and do as much as we can to make sure that our sponsors are always acknowledged. We're working on a program this year to try and do some very specific media outreach for some of our larger sponsors that they can share on social media and that we would share on social media. So there's great opportunities for those kind of partnerships too. I mean, every sponsor you're working with probably has a Facebook page or an Instagram or something like that. And find ways you can partner with them, and so they can help promote you, you can promote them, and it shows their involvement in the community through some of these other sort of social media channels.
So now you've gotten through this year, or you're about to enter this year. What about years down the road? How are you going to plan for the future? So we budget to a certain extent for adding capital into our system. We have bought 7 or 8 large machine tools that we've put into our shop. That took some savings and looking for individual contributions from sponsors for specific capital investments. And we are looking at trying to build up sufficient reserve that we can either buy more equipment or even build new facilities. And we're also in discussion with our school district about building a STEM-related building in which we might be able to move our team into a larger complex. Ultimately, we're interested in, for example, there's a group of 6 teams in Texas that built a complex together where they house all of the teams in one place. So those sorts of things, you want to think about where your team is going, what kind of growth that you have, what are the amount of funds that you're going to need in order to accommodate that growth. And part of that is making sure that you have a carryover from year to year. Don't run your budget down to 0 at the end of the year. Typically, we're ending up with something on the order of about 15% in terms of a carryover from year to year. So we start the year with a buffer so that we're able to get some of the expenses that we incur in September and October, and then we're working to repay that, what we pull down, and then have that carryover for the next year. We're hoping to build up that reserve as well in order to be part of our capital budgeting as we're going along. But it's part of that thinking process of you're doing more than just getting through this year. You're trying to think about where you're going to be in future years.
And so one thing that isn't on here, but I'll bring up, and if you guys have questions about it, you can ask, or you can talk to me later about it, is this year, Citrus Circuits started our own nonprofit foundation. So we started the Davis Robotics Foundation this year. We, in the past, were using a nonprofit through our school. It was actually a blue and white foundation, which was set up for mainly sports teams, and we were using them to take our donations and provide a tax benefit for our sponsors. It was kind of cumbersome in having to go through them and get the money out and not knowing when things came in and everything. So over the last couple of years, we worked to try and establish a nonprofit. And this last year, we were able to successfully get through that process. And so now we do have the Davis Robotics Foundation, which is set up not only to fund Citrus Circuits, but to also provide a nonprofit foundation that can accept funds for other teams, fund other types of events. And so we're just kind of getting started with that. And we're seeing that there's a lot of advantages. That gives us a lot of more control over our money. When it comes in, knowing what we have, how it's dispersed, and it also provides us some more opportunities to help other teams and get involved with other events as a nonprofit. So if anybody has any questions about that, I'd be happy to talk about it, or if you want to talk about setting one up for yourself and want to talk to me about it later, I'm happy to walk you through the process. It's not difficult, it's just mainly tedious. There's a lot of forms to fill out and a lot of government things to read, and so it's not terribly exciting, but it does have great opportunities for your team if that's a direction you want to go in. So with that, if you guys have any questions, we're happy to answer anything you might want to ask.
Thanks for watching our video. Hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to fruit punch that like button and comment your team number down below. If you want to subscribe, click over here. If you want to watch more fall workshop videos, click over here. I'm from Team 1678, and this is Citrus.